This video is a quick guide to the basics of how to play Savage Worlds. It's intended for people who have played other RPGs like Dungeons & Dragons or Pathfinder. Core gameplay. Savage Worlds is a simple game. Attributes and skills are rated by die size, from D4 to D12, with D6 being the average man. The larger the die, the better. Whenever you're asked to make a check, you roll the listed die and try to beat the target number, which is usually 4. As a named important character, you're what's called a wild card. Wild cards get a number of benefits, including a special die called a wild die. For basically any skill or attribute check, you roll a d6 in addition to your listed die, and take the highest of the two results. So let's say you wanted to pick a lock. You'd roll the thievery die, a d8 in this case, and a wild die, which is a d6, and take the highest. If you get a 4 or higher, the lock is picked. Exploding dice. All of the dice in Savage Worlds explode. What that means is that if you roll the highest face value on a die, such as a 6 on a d6 or a 10 on a d10, you roll the die again and add them together. There is no limit to how many times a die can explode, and even damage dice can explode. This opens the possibility of infinite damage. Raises and tiered success. Unlike most RPGs, Savage Worlds has a tiered success system. For every 4 over the target number, it's called a raise. What a raise does depends on context. A raise on an attack might do extra damage. A raise on a repair roll might do the repair more quickly to a higher standard or for a lower cost. A raise on a knowledge roll might give extra information on the subject, etc. Health, damage and shaken. One of the hardest concepts for people to wrap their head around when it comes to Savage Worlds is the idea of shaken. If you take 1 point of damage, you don't lose health. Instead, you become shaken. If you take 1 point of damage while you are shaken, you lose health. You can recover from shaken by either succeeding at a spirit check at the start of your turn, or by spending a Benny at any time. I'll explain Bennies later. For now, what matters is that shaken is a short-term condition that means you're vulnerable to damage. Mechanically, this can be thought of as being like the recharging shields from Halo. It's a buffer that helps protect you from minor damage. In universe, what is shaken supposed to be? One way to think of it is like an action film. When Indiana Jones gets punched in the face, he might fall down, be dazed, or sent reeling long enough for the bad guy to hit him again, but he doesn't spend the rest of the film nursing a broken jaw. That's shaken. Compare that to when he gets shot in the arm during the truck chase. That injury hangs around until he gets a chance to heal. That would be taking a wound. If you get a raise on a damage roll, that would mean 2 points of damage. The first making the character shaken, and the second wounding them for 1 point of damage. Due to exploding dice, there's technically no limit to the amount of raises and thus the amount of damage you can deal with a single hit. This rule cuts both ways. Bennies. Bennies are a special token that have a number of uses. You start the game with 2 and will likely get more as the game progresses. Bennies don't carry over from session to session. Bennies can be spent on a number of things. The main 3 are to re-roll a check, to recover from being shaken even if it's not your turn, or to soak damage. After someone has rolled damage against you, you can spend a Benny to make a vigor check. For each success and raise, you ignore 1 damage. It is possible to negate all damage from a single attack this way. Most games I have run have other ways to use Bennies, but those are house rules and beyond the scope of this video. Taking your turn. If you start your turn shaken, you roll to see if you lose shaken. If you do, take your turn as normal. If you don't, you're limited to 3 actions like moving or taking cover. A standard turn in Savage Worlds is movement and 1 action. Movement is you can move up to your pierce. By default, 1 pace is 1 inch on the board, which is about 5 feet in universe. You get 1 action. There are ways to do more actions a turn, but a basic turn is 1 action. You can move and do actions in any order you want, so you can move, do an action, and move some more if you want. You now know all you need to start playing Savage Worlds. There is of course way more rules than this, but most of these can be introduced as you play. The rest of this video will be advice for veterans of other RPGs. If you want to stop now, let me say thanks for watching, and I hope this video helped. Savage Worlds is a low numbers game. In D20 systems, a +1 is barely noticeable, resulting in about a 5% boost in power. In Savage Worlds, where the target number is often 4, a +1 can be a 25% boost in power, if not a third. This also applies to health. Wildcards start with 3 hit points, and it's rare for player characters to go above that. This makes logical sense. James Bond doesn't end his films being able to shrug off a tank shell to the face. It also means that the balance problems of scaling health and damage are avoided. The all D4 strategy doesn't really work. One trick I see min-maxers say is that Savage Worlds is easily broken by keeping skills at D4. The idea is that a D4 has a 25% chance of rolling a natural 4, therefore D4 is the best dice to have because you'll be critting constantly. There are 3 problems with this. First, a dice explosion is not a critical hit in the D&D or Pathfinder sense. In fact, critical hits aren't really a thing in Savage Worlds. The closest thing is getting a raise. Second, exploding dice isn't the goal. Rolling above the target number is the goal. If your target number is 4, a D4 has a 25% chance to roll that, a D6 has a 50% chance, and a D10 has a 70% chance, and the D10 also has a 30% chance of rolling an 8 or more, giving you a raise. And third, the same holds true if we just count explosions for farming the maximum amount of raises from a single roll. A D4 has a 25% chance to explode, a D12 has an 8% chance to explode. Sounds like a win for a D4. But remember, we've got to roll a 12. So 25% of 25% is 6.5%. 25% of that is 1.5%, which means that rolling a 12 or more is more likely on a D12 than it is an exploding D4. I could go on, but I stopped counting when talking about 1/100% and half a dozen raises. Another argument I've seen for the all D4 build is that there's a 2% higher chance of rolling a 6 on an exploding D4 versus a natural 6 on a D6. 18% chance for the D4 versus 16% chance on a D6. This is a legitimate criticism, but once again, D4 is crushed by D8's 25% chance to roll 6 or more, and D12's 58% chance to roll a 6 or more. And even if we limit it to just D4 versus D6, the D4 strategy still has a less than 20% chance of success under ideal conditions. The point is, the pure D4 build is not the game-breaking uber strat it's made out to be, especially when you consider the numbers that are actually relevant to the game and how the game works. Vague traits. Most skills and attributes are fairly easy to figure out if you come from other RPGs. Agility is dexterity, vigor is constitution, notice is perception, etc. Some are less obvious, so I'll quickly go over those. Spirit. A general measure of personality and mental fortitude, almost like a combination of charisma, wisdom, and willpower. Thievery. A combination of sleight of hand, pickpocket, lockpick, and escape artist. Battle. This is a strange name for a skill that measures battlefield strategic knowledge and command ability. This is used for the mass battle system. I don't know why it's not called command. Shooting is your ability to hit with ranged weapons such as guns, bows, and rocket launchers. Athletics deals with things like climbing, swimming, and throwing weapons. Fighting covers all melee attacks from fists to swords. These skills are deliberately broad, as it would be strange for an expert sniper to pick up a pistol and have no idea which end the bullets come out. And that's the end of the video. I might make a follow-up covering advanced rules and character creation. Once again, thanks for watching. Bye.